Good morning from Singleton Solicitors. This short video provides a bit of guidance in relation to compensation for air travellers and to the airlines themselves. I do an awful lot of regulatory work, cases against the government and authorities in relation to interpretation of EU regulations, and I'm happy to advise any client in this area. It's fascinating. There's a lot of money at stake at the moment, and not everybody understands the regulations concerned. So let's look first at what the law that we have. We're talking here about EU Regulation 261/2004. Now, this is a regulation. That means it applies automatically in every one of the EU member states. It doesn't require national law to bring it into force. So that is the law. Always look at the territorial limits, whether you're the airline or the consumer, to see whether it applies or not. So you need to check that out. Secondly, there is an obligation under Article 9 that essentially accommodation and food will be provided. So if you were stranded and that was not done, then you may find that you can now claim what the cost of that would have been. However, there is also a right under that regulation to claim money, cash compensation for delays. You need to go and look at the regulation. You can find it in a few seconds on the internet to look at what that is. However, Article 7 does not apply in exceptional circumstances, and it would certainly be my view that most airlines could prove these were exceptional circumstances. So in other words, you don't get the cash, but they had an obligation to house and look after you, and not everybody has been looked after properly. However, you also have a load of freeloaders. They went to stay in the top hotel in the place where they were, and now they're saying, please may we have £3,000 or whatever it is as compensation for this delay. You can tell them, if you're the airline, on your bike, mate. Article 9 is an obligation for them to be housed and looked after. That might be in a fairly low, cheap standard of hotel. It is not a right to a cash sum. Now, there's a completely separate issue, which is one of PR. And plenty of companies will find it very advantageous if they can say they will honour and repay any obligations or moral obligations to passengers who are left stranded. That's an issue for them, very important, can be as important as the law. So do check the policy of some. I've noticed advertisements from banks, for example, saying that they will ensure that their insurance will pay out even if there were a get out in the contract. But you might find yourself caught between two stools, the insurance company and the airline. However, any airline that needs legal advice on this area, or anyone against whom a claim has been made by consumers, might well want to take some legal advice. They might find it helpful to have a summary of that advice and the reasons why they don't necessarily have to pay out huge sums, particularly if they did seek to provide accommodation and assistance and food. In other words, if they satisfied their Article 9 requirement, then that may be it. It's strange Article 9 actually has no get out for extraordinary circumstances nor financial cap on it, and it may well be that legislation needs to be looked at again in terms of who bears the cost. You pay £30 for a ticket and you put up for 10 days in the only available hotel on the island, which costs £200 a night. You can see why some airlines are whinging. Very interesting laws, but the law as it stands at the moment in Regulation 261/2004 is that Article 9 is not subject to the exceptional circumstances provision, and the airline or tour company or whoever your contract was in the relevant jurisdiction and check it's one to which the regulation applies, then they would have been obligated to house you and provide you with food. If they did none of that and basically abandoned you, then you might well be entitled to make a claim for a modest, reasonable amount of accommodation and food. Anyone needing legal advice on this can email Susan Singleton, that's me, and my email address is susan@singlelaw.com, website www.singlelaw.com.